Well, look alive, because here we go. It's happening once again. It's Travel Truth and Other Confessions. I am your host, Erik Hastings. You can call me Erik the Travel Guy. You can call me anything you want to. Just don't call me in the morning. Hello. Welcome back to what I consider to be the only podcast you need when it comes to travel. Why? Because I'm going to read all the stories for you. I'm going to give you all the tips. I'm going to tell you what all these stories mean to you and how they help you with ideas on where to go, what to do, and where to stay on your next vacation. Now, we're doing a little bit of an experiment today, too. We've got the YouTube video going, which means you could watch me speak or listen to me speak. What's next? Are we going to do the VR? Is that what's going to do the virtual? You could sit right here with me? I don't know how I feel about that, but nevertheless, you could do that. And the reason I mention that is because you can watch this video on YouTube, or you can listen to the podcast wherever it is you get your podcasts, such as Spotify or Apple Podcasts. The website is Travel Truth and Other Confessions, erikthetravelguy.com. That will also, you can always go back there. That's where the website is, and the YouTube channel as well. And I was involved in an ordeal. I was involved in a situation. Now, many of you already know I was on the 737 Boeing MAX 8 airplane as it returned to service, thanks to our friends over at American Airlines for having me. That was very nice of them. I got to hang out with my buddy Peter Greenberg and my new friend from The Points Guy, but we won't talk about that right now. That's for a different matter. And what this did is give me a front row seat to the subject of this podcast. Okay? Because people, they need the tips. You guys are always asking me for tips. Erik, give me a tip. What's the travel tip for me? You know, I want to go to the latest place that nobody knows about it. Well, if nobody knows about it, why would I tell you about it? But it doesn't, never mind. Today, we're going to be discussing the unsung heroes of the travel industry, of which there are many. But today, we're talking about the flight attendants. Now, let me just be very clear. We've been flying commercially, for quite some time. Okay, flying used to be rather an uncomfortable affair. I mean, the planes, the cabins weren't pressurized. You had to fly at low altitudes. They were slow. They're going like 100 miles an hour. They were loud, and it was bumpy. And there was no in-flight meal. There were no in-flight cocktails. There were no seat-back entertainment systems. I mean, for heaven's sakes, there wasn't even like a sickness bag, okay? So then we decided we're going to add flight attendants. And at the time, they were called stewardesses. So there's my first tip for you. Anybody under the age of, 75 needs to understand that we changed the name of the people who are in the back of the plane to help us, and they're called flight attendants now. They're not, sometimes you hear them called cabin stewards and sometimes, but that's very rare. We used to call them stewardesses. They're now called flight attendants. Okay, there's my first tip for you. Now, you might say, Erik, I know this. Well, I have another tip for you. Behave yourself when you're on an airplane. Now, again, some of you may be saying, it's kind of a no-brainer. I knew that already. Did you? Well, I'm proud of you then. Good for you. Sit tight, because you will not believe the story I'm about to tell you. Because just the other day, literally the other day, I don't even know what the date is. It's the 30th of December, 2020. Oh, 2020 cannot go by fast enough. Just the other day, I think it was on Monday, two people, okay, two, plus their dog, which is another subject for a podcast. Two people opened the cabin door and exited the plane via the emergency slide at LaGuardia Airport. You may be saying to yourself, Erik, that's not even possible. Oh, my friend, it is possible. Speaking of which, don't forget to subscribe. Hit the subscribe button. Even if you don't know what that means, it means a lot to us, and it means a lot to the YouTube algorithm and the Apple Podcasts algorithm and Spotify. Hit the subscribe button, okay? We'll talk more about that later. And keep listening, by the way. Keep watching. I would really appreciate it. Even if you have to step away and go to the can. That's fine. Just keep the thing running. It's very important. Yes. This was Delta Airlines Flight 462. It was going down to Atlanta. It was taxiing out from the gate when this happened. Okay?
We're at 12 Alpha, and we had a passenger exit the airplane using the slide, so we're surrounded by all emergency equipment.
I don't want to go into great detail. Anyway, they jumped off the slide and they left. So the plane, of course, can't fly with an emergency slide. So it went back to the gate. It disrupted the entire flight. They had to rebook everybody. It was a big to-do. Of course, these people were arrested. Now, the dude says he has PTSD. And I'm not here to argue with PTSD. I'm not going to argue the validity. I don't understand. I'm not a doctor. I'm a travel expert, okay? I'm not a doctor. I'm not a medical expert. And if you've got PTSD, and according to him, he said, the being in a confined space triggered my PTSD. Okay. That's when, if that should happen to you, that's tip number 2. You have a button above your head, okay? There's a light up there. There's some air up there. There's a little fan. And there's a little button that you literally, bong, you can call the flight attendant. Even if you're taxiing. And the flight attendant will address your situation. You can press that button. But I'm here to remind you that flight attendants are there primarily for your safety and for the safety of the other passengers. But they do operate under certain rules and restrictions that are governed by the airline, by the FAA. I mean, there's a lot that goes into it. And most flight attendants make it look easy, don't get me wrong. And yes, I'm sure there are a few bad apples in the bunch too, but on the whole, flight attendants are there to make us as comfortable as possible going 500 miles an hour at 34,000 feet. You can ring the call button if you're having a problem. If someone doesn't come by soon enough to do. But no, you can't just get off the plane. The reason I mention this story is that I witnessed something truly remarkable. And it was remarkable to me and probably not to the flight attendant in question. And it takes me back to yesterday. Yesterday, I flew down on the MAX 8 with American Airlines. Thank you very much for letting me go and do that. Down to Miami, and then I was just going to do a turnaround and come back. Turnaround meaning I just showed up in Miami. I was there for like an hour, and then I got on another plane and came back to LaGuardia. We were getting ready to what we would call push back from the gate, and they closed the door. Actually, I'm not sure they closed the door. They didn't close the door yet. The captain comes on and says, "We have got a discrepancy in our paperwork. And it's not a big deal, but we want it fixed, so we might be a few minutes late leaving. We'll make up the time in the air. Don't worry about it, but just want to let you know that we're not going to push back. As we said, we are on time. It'll be a couple minutes late. Okay, no problem. No. Now, mind you, I'm going from Miami to New York. Okay, this plane is filled with New Yorkers. Again, the subject of another podcast altogether. That delay took a little longer than I think even the captain was expecting. Now, mind you, we're talking with the captain here. This is the senior person on board. The captain then comes on to say, look, this aircraft was in the Caribbean today, and they performed some routine maintenance. However, the maintenance they performed, we don't believe is reflected in the paperwork correctly, and I'm not going to fly this plane until I'm satisfied of what maintenance actually happened, and that the paperwork is... Now, that's what they told us, and that's fine with me. That's a good enough explanation. Hey, listen, you need the paperwork to be right before we leave. That's your prerogative. You're the captain. You're here to make us safe. We don't want to discover... I was talking with my seatmate. I even said she and I were talking about that. Saying, right, take as much time as you need, buddy. I mean, we don't really want to be delayed, but we also don't want to discover a problem in the air. Again, when we're going 500 miles an hour at that altitude. The delay went on for a while. And the reason I say it went on for a while is because at one point it was, okay, we've got it all solved. We closed the door. We backed up from the gate. We were turning, and the captain came on and said, no, this is not satisfactory. I thought we had this under control. We do not. We have to go back to the gate. So we did. We went back to the gate. Now, keep in mind, we're talking about, at this point, an hour delay. Now, an hour is a long time to most people, myself included. I understand, especially when the flight time to New York from Miami is 2.5 hours. And we've been sitting now, we got on board at 6:30, and now here it is, I think it was close to 8 o'clock or so. I was in the front of the plane, so I got a front row seat to all of the people that began to come up to the front of the plane and inquire about getting off this plane. One man, probably in his 60s, announced that he was not happy that American Airlines was holding him hostage. The flight attendants, of course, were like, we're not holding you hostage. You can get off the plane. Well, if I'm getting off the plane, I want where I need my luggage. No, we can't open the cargo hold. The luggage will go to New York and it'll come back to Miami tomorrow or wherever it is you're going. But you can't take your luggage. We can't do that. It's against the rules. Again, I'm being held hostage. Now, I'm not sure exactly what happened to that dude, but you can feel the tension on this airplane because some people did actually get off. They got on other planes and they just left because now the captain has said, and now we have another problem. Our first officer is going to time out, which means he can't fly because he's been on the clock too long, and there are certain very strict rules about that. But don't worry, we have another first officer coming, so by the time the paperwork gets solved, we should have the first officer problem solved. So this is all going to work out. Again, apologizing for the delay, and I appreciate that. Then there was the, I want to say 20-something girl, doesn't have to be, it could be a man, it happened to be a woman, whom was pretty rude to the flight attendant. Now, I'm not going to go into a he said, she said bit. I mean, I was there. I didn't take notes. The woman said that she has anxiety. She had a service animal with her and another person that she was traveling with. She was, frankly, not that pleasant. She had a lot of questions that were not being answered satisfactorily, and she was agitated about, and it escalated. I'm just going to leave it at that. It escalated to the point that the flight attendant, also a New Yorker, thrilled. This woman, amazing, said, "I'm sorry, ma'am," and she called her ma'am. "If we can't seem to come to a resolution, you can't fly on this plane with us tonight. You will be asked to leave." And that didn't go over well. Some people were called. So I'm not making light of this. Once again, I'm just telling you what happened. Now, this woman, although it shouldn't matter, was wearing sweatpants, maybe some flip-flops, I'm not sure, and a T-shirt. She looked like she just rolled out of bed and onto the airplane. Now, that's a separate matter, and you say, Erik, that shouldn't matter. You're right, maybe it shouldn't. Nevertheless, she's got anxiety, and she announced to the flight attendants, to all of us, by proxy, that she has anxiety, and really was arguing and name-calling. The authorities were called. I don't know what the outcome of that discussion was. Here's what happened that was amazing. The American Airlines flight attendant, now I've given you all the details I'm going to give you about this person, and I'm not going to identify her, but you could find out if you wanted to, this flight attendant, and if you can, you need to send her a note and say, I heard about what happened. Good on you. Good job, you. Because here's what happened. Now, I didn't hear all the exchange, but the flight attendant said to this woman after a few minutes, and we were getting ready to go. Again, it was a 2-hour delay. This is not, 10 minutes. And I felt for every single passenger on the plane. So whatever. And I know the flight attendants did too. The flight attendant said, you know what? We're going to start over. I'm willing to start over. I didn't realize that your anxiety was as severe as it was, or is, whatever. She and all but apologized. I don't know if the woman would accept it as an apology, but she was clearly resetting the table here and saying, if you want to fly on this plane with us tonight, I am more than happy to overlook our previous fracas. And if you kindly take your seat, no harm, no foul, no fuss, no muss. Let's just get this done and get up to New York. Think of... I was absolutely stunned. I wasn't stunned in one sense that these flight attendants go through so much more than you think that they do, because you are probably an average normal person who gets on board a flight and smiles and does what they're told, doesn't talk on their phone when they're not supposed to, buckles their seatbelt, isn't up walking around when they're not supposed to. You listen to directions, you follow directions. When I say these people are the unsung heroes of that giant metal tube, you're probably like, yeah, whatever. They just kind of walk around and they kind of sometimes got an attitude and, they bring me a drink. No. It's because on an almost constant basis, they are faced with these individual people and circumstances and problems that they need to overcome to get that flight moving, staying moving, whatever the case may be. And they do it on every airline, every single day, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. So American Airlines, if you were listening to this podcast or watching it on the YouTube, hey, and I met the COO on that flight. So listen, it was good to meet you. I liked your blue sweater. Nice. Make sure you track this woman down and say, good for you for resolving this issue. And that woman did stay on board, and we did go up to New York, and it was uneventful at best. The paperwork was corrected. The captain was happy. Our new first officer arrived. We did arrive late. It happens. But that's my tip for you. Behave yourself. Give them a smile. I always smile at the flight attendants, no matter what kind of day I'm having, because chances are this isn't their first flight of the day, and chances are it's not going to be their last flight of the day, and there's 300 people, and they all have issues and problems and whatever. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for this edition of Travel Truth and Other Confessions. Again, really important, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Nothing's going to happen if you do that. It'll just mean something to us. Subscribe to the podcast, share it, like it, give it a little comment. If you want to comment about flight attendants, I would love it if you would do that. Do so. Just take a minute, write a couple of sentences. It means a lot to me. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. We'll see you again next time.